Hello America, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the third part of the secrets of statutory law. This part is called Undefined, and it is presented to the American people on or about 24 March, the year 13 after Bitcoin. The third part of this series is to know the meaning of the terms not defined. When words lose their meaning, people lose their freedom. To understand the terms not defined, let us consider some examples. Do you have books? Would you return your books there? What kind of books would you put into this box? Library books, not our own books. If you went to McDonald's and you went into the restroom, you may see this sign that says all employees must wash hands before returning to work. What kind of employees are they referring to? Walmart employees? Burger King employees? No, we all know it means McDonald's employees. So that brings us to the idea of statutory application, and that is, words of universal scope will be construed as meaning only those subject to the legislation. For example, how do we thank our veterans? Do we say thank you for your labor, thank you for your service, thank you for your hard work, or thank you for your protection? Most of us would say thank you for your service. So what is service? We have armed services, postal service, secret service, U.S. Marshal Service, rural housing service, national ocean service. All these are services. Doesn't that make service a government service? So the Supreme Court says that it is elementary law that every statute is to be read in the light of the Constitution. However broad and general its language, it cannot be interpreted as extending beyond those matters which it was within the constitutional power of the legislature to reach. So what does the light of the Constitution reveal about the meaning of service? Article 1 says senators and representatives will be paid for their services. Article 2, the president shall be paid for his services. Article 3 says the judges shall be paid for their services, and back to Article 1, we see that the militia may be employed in the service of the United States. What do you think service means? Did you do service? If you did not do service, then why did you get a W-2 or a 1099? Did you read the authorizing statutes? A W-2 is authorized by 26 U.S.C. 3401, where the term wages mean remuneration for services. A 1099 miscellaneous is authorized by Section 6041A, where a service recipient must report remuneration for services performed. And a service recipient is a person which is any government unit and any instrumentality thereof. And if a service recipient is any government unit, then doesn't service mean government service? What if Congress intended the term service to include any and all services, including private service? They can't. Why can't Congress redefine service to mean any service whatsoever? Well, that leads us to the next statutory secret, which is that Congress cannot redefine the terms in the Constitution, since it cannot by legislation alter the Constitution from which alone it derives its power to legislate. Therefore, service can only mean government service, because it's the only service that is within the constitutional power of the legislature to reach. Which brings us to the final statutory secret, the Supremacy Clause. The terms of the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby, except when constitutional protections are surrendered by failing to invoke the power of its terms. The power of constitutional terms mean that in expounding the Constitution, every word has its due force and appropriate meaning, and that meaning does not alter. Constitutional terms have a significance not to be found in the dictionary, and Congress cannot override these terms nor redefine them. That makes them the ultimate legal protection against tyranny. Let us summarize this three-part series. In Part 1, we determined that words matter, and in general, a statute is treated as a contract. Statutes, like contracts, require consent. It is important to recognize that governments are playing games with us. Governments manufacture consent using statutes in order to contract away our constitutional rights, mostly without our knowledge. In Part 2, we learned that statutory definitions must be followed even if it varies from that term's ordinary meaning, and that includes generally excludes unstated meanings of that term, and that title, or the as used in clause, confines the subject matter to the constitutional power of the legislature. Generally, that means property belonging to the United States or a commercial activity. In Part 3, we learned that Congress cannot override the will of the people by redefining the words in the Constitution, and that constitutional protections are conferred by invoking its terms, just as statutory provisions are based on the terms of its contract. Constitutional protections are surrendered by failing to invoke the power of its terms. So therefore, do not surrender our Constitution. Instead, defend the Constitution. By that I mean, own a house, but don't have a residential property unless you're operating a rooming house and a bed and breakfast home. Travel by car. Do not operate a motor vehicle unless you are a carrier moving persons and property for hire in the course of business. Assemble peaceably. Don't protest or demonstrate without a permit. It is not a constitutional right to protest. It is a constitutional right to peaceably assemble and petition the government. Furthermore, work for a living unless you're performing service. Then you would be receiving gross income from an employee or a service recipient. Own, acquire, and spend private property, that is Bitcoin. Do not accept any financial interest in virtual currency, which is treated as property, and that means property belonging to the United States. Bear arms for personal use or the common defense, but don't carry firearms without a license, because carrying a firearm means to carry for hire to protect persons and property or in the performance of a duty. And that is how you invoke the power of the Constitution in a plain and reasonable manner. Thank you for watching. Please share the truth, for the truth shall set us free. And if you have a difficult question which cannot be answered in the comments, or if you have a video request, please send Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, or Dash, and this is my email. Thank you.